All right, today we're going to take a little trip all the way to the sunny plains of Africa. We're there to meet a young gazelle who, well, she just wasn't quite like the others. Her name was Dell, and this is her story.
So, let's set the scene. We're in Tanzania, on this huge golden savanna. And right in the middle of it all, that's where we find our main character, a young gazelle named Dell.
Now, if you just looked at her, Dell seemed like any other gazelle. She had the pointy horns, the black stripes, the white tummy, the whole deal. But here's the thing. While the other gazelles were all about chasing each other and jumping around, Dell, she was different. Her absolute favorite thing to do was to just lie down in the tall grass, hidden away, and watch the clouds float by.
So there she is, one afternoon, just chillin', totally lost in a cloud that kind of looked like a lion, when suddenly this big shadow falls over her. She looks up, and there's this bird. A very, very strange bird that had landed just a few feet away.
You know, some animals look like they were made up for a cartoon. That's a shoebill. This thing was 4.5 feet tall, with these long, skinny legs, a neck like a linebacker, and a head as big as a football. But the beak, the beak. It literally looked like a giant leather shoe was stuck to its face. Just wild. Dell was completely fascinated. She just pops right up, introduces herself, and this bird, after looking at her for a second, says in this slow, deep voice, "Hello, I'm Bill the Shoebill." Dell just had to laugh. Dell the gazelle and Bill the shoebill. It was perfect.
And right then and there, Dell makes a decision. I mean, being a gazelle was okay, but being a shoebill, that looked awesome. She just had to know what it was like. So she asks Bill, who seems to be the expert, if he can help her become a shoebill, just for one day.
Bill kind of tilts his giant head, thinks about it for a second, and lays out the two most important rules. He says to be a shoebill, you need two things. Number one, big wings. And number two, an even bigger bill.
Well, that was all Dell needed to hear. Before Bill could even say another word, she was off. Just a blur, sprinting out into the savannah on a mission to put together her shoebill costume.
So her first stop was this huge ant colony. The ants were super busy and a little grumpy, but they told her, wings, they belong in the sky. Go find a giraffe. So she did. And this super tall giraffe was nice enough to pluck 2 big leafy branches from a tree and drop them down. Perfect. Then, for the beak, she found a hippo, who dove down into the river and came back up with an actual shoe, left behind by a tourist she'd scared off a while back.
Okay, so now she's got all the parts. Using these long, tough strips of elephant grass, Dell gets to work. She ties the branches onto her back. They look just like wings. And then she fastens the old shoe right onto her face for the beak. Her transformation was complete. She trots back to the marsh, and Bill, who hadn't moved an inch by the way, was actually impressed. He looks her up and down and says, "Wow, I hardly recognize you. For a gazelle, you look a lot like a shoebill." Dell was so excited. She had totally nailed the look. So, what was next? The most important part. How do you actually act like a shoebill? Bill's answer was, well, simple. He just said, "We wait," for fish. And then he went right back to standing perfectly still, his eyes glued to the water. Dell did her best. She really did. But after about 10 minutes, she was getting fidgety. After 30 minutes, she was going out of her mind. Watching clouds was one thing, but this was just nothing. She started thinking, this is what they do all day? This is even more boring than being a gazelle. And as she stood there, getting more and more restless, something weird started to happen. She could feel her heart pounding like a drum. Dub, 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 getting faster and louder. And then she felt it. The ground itself started to shake. And then, from way up in a tree, a baboon screamed out the one word that everybody on the savannah dreads. Stampede. Instantly, Bill unfolds these massive, powerful wings and just lifts off into the sky, circling above all the chaos. He's yelling down at Dell to fly up with him, but her wings, well, her wings were just leafy branches tied on with grass. Great for a costume, not so great for, flying. She flapped and flapped as hard as she could, but it was totally useless. The grass ribbon snapped, the branches fell off, the shoe went flying, her whole shoebill costume just fell to pieces around her. And right when she started to panic, she remembered something the hippo had told her earlier. Being a gazelle isn't boring. And in that terrifying moment, it finally clicked. Because gazelles have a superpower. It's not flying, it's running. These animals are in the top 10 fastest on the entire planet. They're built for pure, unadulterated speed.
And that's exactly what she did. She just exploded forward. It was like a lightning strike. Her legs were a total blur, her hooves barely even touching the ground as she rocketed away from that thunderous stampede.
The wind was rushing past her face, and she felt this incredible surge of joy. High up above, Bill could just faintly hear her shouting into the wind, "I love running!" A little while later, after all the dust had settled, Bill swooped down and found Dell catching her breath a few miles away. He looked at her and asked, "So, you still want to be a shoebill?"
Dell thought about it for a second. She told him that pretending was fun for sure, but she'd much rather have the fastest legs on the savannah than big wings and a crazy beak. So the two of them walked back to the marsh where it all started. Bill went back to standing in the water, waiting. Dell went back to lying in the grass, watching the clouds. They were both back to doing their own thing, but this time they were doing it together.